Greetings and welcome to the Smoke 2013 webinar. My name is Quinn Richardson. I am one of the technical specialists here with Autodesk, and more importantly, I've been on Smoke for about 12 years or so. I see the goal of this webinar is to touch on the best elements of Smoke as well as topics that may not have gotten as much attention before. We've been doing these webinars throughout the year and especially since the pre-release of 2013. Hopefully you've gotten your hands on that and have had a try and are here to get some more information. The first place I'd like to start is not even within Smoke application. When you first install Smoke, it installs the utilities folder, and there are two programs in there. One of them I'll just talk about and the other I'll open. The service monitor I'll just talk about. That when you open it, you'll see a bunch of either green lights or red lights. There are a bunch of services that work for Smoke in the background. And more importantly, we're going to talk about the Smoke Setup app. And what that is that allows you to set certain preferences and certain settings that are not available within the Smoke interface. So when you first open it, it's by default on the General tab, and it has a number of different sections, and we're going to talk on these pretty quickly. The first is your video device. So if you have a video capture card like one of the AJAs, one of our good partners, set up, or if you're on an iMac and you're actually, or a MacBook Pro and you have an IOXT, you would set that there. This machine I'm working on today does not have one of those, so I'm going to set it to none. And the same kind of goes for your audio device. If you have an AJA board, you set it to that. If you just want to play out through your internal speakers and whatnot, set it to core audio. Reserved application memory generally should be left to automatic. Unless you're troubleshooting something or working with support, it's recommended that you just leave it at automatic. The application memory is actually handled dynamically by the application, and if you notice on almost any of these things, if you hover over it long enough, you will get a tooltip that gives you a little further information. Next is the network panel display. So what this does is this looks across your network and will show machines, other frame stores, other Smokes that can be mounted, or you can set it to show all, and for that it doesn't check whether it can be mounted or not, it just displays them all across the board. Your default web browser gives it the command to open, and this is important for your Smoke help menu, and also if you want to access the Smoke wiki for additional information. Menu bar. Now this, we give you the option to either turn it on or off. Now this is the Apple menu bar across the top. Some people feel more comfortable with it on, and I think if you're just starting, it is a good thing to have on, because within each of those menus we have a lot of functions that are echoed in the interface. But additionally, it has the key commands listed next to them. So if you're just learning and want to know what all the key shortcuts are, leaving the menu bar on is a pretty good idea. The bottom part deals with archiving. Most of this is just setting defaults. So if you have a size that you archive to all the time, maybe you're archiving to DVDs, you can set that default size, as well as location. Maybe that's on a local drive or a SAN or maybe even a NAS. So whenever you go to archive, those will be the default figures. You'll still be able to modify them from the Smoke interface, but it'll be just the figures that are already in there. Now the one thing you don't see in the Smoke interface is the table of contents location. Now what this is a record of your archives. So say you do archive things off to a DVD and then delete it, or off to a SAN and it's laid off to, say, a hard drive that's put on a shelf, or an LTL. You can go to the table of contents to look in the archive to find out if it has the files that you need before asking someone to pull that drive and remount it or restore the file off an LTO tape. Really handy to have, and not talked about too much, but it's definitely a time saver and a work saver. Next tab is our video preview settings. So we have a lot of common resolutions as well as frame rates through here, as well as your sync source, from everything from NTSC up through the HD stuff. VTR, we have a ton of VTRs, and here right now I don't have any turned on. And we have presets already for everything from D1s down to HD Cam SRs, as well as various other things like a D6 or a D5. And so these turn up in your video I/O menu. And right now none of them would show up until I tick them on and make them active. I don't have any decks hooked up here, so I'm not going to deal with that. And honestly, everything is going so very tapeless that I haven't used the deck very much lately. Our next is we have VTR emulation, and that really kind of carries over from our VTR. And next is one of the more important things, at least to me, is your media storage. Now right here I'm working on a Mac Pro, so I only have one storage volume. However, I think it's quite advantageous to have this when you are maybe working on a MacBook Pro. So at your desk in your facility, you may be hooked up to a large Thunderbolt RAID, in which case you'd have one volume defined, and then you could add actually a second one. Maybe you're working just off an internal SSD for when you're on the road, and you can set up your projects accordingly and go between the two. Our final tab is our Backburner Manager. By default, it is set to localhost, so that is your local machine. However, if you have multiple machines on a network, multiple Smokes or other Autodesk products, you may be running Backburner on a machine all by itself that just kind of takes that load, in which case you could specify that IP address. Alright, so let's go back to the general one. I'm going to actually turn the menu bar off for this, and we're going to hit Apply, Close, and Start Smoke. Okay, when you first start Smoke, you're presented with this screen, in which case you're going to choose a project and a user, which we've talked about in a number of previous webinars, and then we hit Start. Great, so when Smoke first comes up, this is what we see. We have a clean desktop, and let's quickly just identify some of the areas. First things I want to touch on is that we have four main areas that we'll be working in. Timeline, probably going to be the area you will spend your most time in. We have tools, which will affect your media and create new media. So we can go in here, and actually for Paint, we can do it with no image. And we can pan in here, and this is actually used. We have cloning as well as some custom things, wash and recursive cloning. And we'll touch maybe on Paint a little bit later, but it's a great tool. We have a stack full of filters that you can use here, things to transform your image, as well as some utilities dealing with burn-in or timecode, or if you're dealing with stereo footage, that is here as well. Timeline being the main one. Conform, now if you're bringing a project from FCP or Avid, or maybe Premiere or one of the other editing applications, you can bring in an XML or AF or even an EDL and conform them here to get your project up and going so you can really polish it off with Smoke. But to do that, you're actually going to need to get your media in, and that leads us to our Media Hub. Media Hub is our media browser built within Smoke, and it really has some advanced features, more so than just digging through the Finder. So let's go digging and look at some footage and see exactly what it has to offer us. Choose the right folder. And one of the things to highlight, really one of the advantages and advances of our media browser in the Media Hub is, number one, you see a set of proxies. You can also view it as a list, thumbnails with the list, or that's actually just thumbnails with preview, as a list, or a list with a preview. So this really condenses it if you have a multitude of files in there. I'm just going to go straight with thumbnails. For any clip in there, you can double click on it, and it does bring up your preview panel again, and it gives you certain information here, as well as a lot of metadata if the file has it contained. This being a red file gives you a tremendous amount of metadata. So we can see right now that this is coming in at 1280 by 675, and if we go to our format specific options, from double clicking on it, it's already been identified as an R3D. The top level, we can just change any kind of metadata we want. You can have the tape name come from the header, or you can specify it in any number of ways. Additionally, we can go to the debayering, and that's probably going to be one of the advanced digital formats like the RED or ARRI RAW that come in various sizes. So this is right now at 1280 675 at a quarter, and you can see that if we bump it up to, say, half premium, the size jumps up to 2560 by 1350. Considering we set this up as an HD format, I will leave it I'll go to, half premium is fine. I'll leave it at 12-bit, and we can set all these, I'll leave all these as their settings. If we had saved some kind of RMD or anything else, we can actually go into here, or if it was shot with HDRX, we can choose how we want to deal with that. For a lot of things right within the Media Hub, it's as simple as just drag and drop. And actually, I'll throw this one into the default library. And let's grab a second one just in case for use later. Now, not only can we just drag and drop within the Media Hub, we do support working from the Finder. So I can go into the Finder, go into my unmanaged media, and I want, let's see, this. And I'm actually going to take these shots rendered folder, the whole folder, drop it at the top. And when it comes up, you'll see that it actually makes it a library. You can see the distinction between a library icon and a folder icon. Now the advantages with libraries is that you can take them and right click and say close library. Now what that does, that'll take it out of your current memory, out of RAM. It's still obviously on your frame store and on disk, but it takes some of the overhead off, so we can go back to open library and it's there. Again, coming from the Finder, we took that and let's see, I'll grab the finals just so we have it. So we can take a look at that piece when we get a chance, and we'll throw that in the shots rendered folder as library as well. Going back into our media hub, another way that you'll get a lot of footage in, and we just started to touch on that, would be to conform something. So let's conform an XML and have that bring in some footage for us. So I'm going to go into, let's see, is it here? Yes, Thompson. Now this is a project we've used this media before, but it illustrates a great point of how the Conform tool works and how easy it is and what options you have. I'm going to turn off link to media files because otherwise, because everything has been media managed and lives in one folder, it would link automatically. Your files are on the same level as your XML. It would find them and we would be done. But that way we don't really learn anything. Actually, before we do that, I want to make a new folder, or actually a new library. So again, it's right click, new library, or you can go down here to new library. So title is Conform. And again, we'll just load that XML in here. I don't want the resolution from the file, it's 8-bit. I know many of the files are actually 10-bit, and it's actually already picking that up. So we will import that. So right away, you can see the XML has laid out the timeline, and I think this is a great beginning step for any Conform. You can see if there were some gaps in here that don't look quite right, or if the length didn't seem right. That would be a telltale sign right away that something is wrong and that maybe you need to look at the XML that was exported or find out where that trouble may lie. And beyond that, we can just start conforming. Everything up here you can see is red X'd. So let's set a search location for it to find the media. And we will hit set. Now it's going to go through all the metadata. There's some default match criteria here, and it'll try and match based on them. And we can bring this and say linked match sources. So you'll see all the green checks change up to a little link icon. And to clean up our work area so we can focus on what we need to still match, we can do hide linked. Now you can see down here a lot of the red outlines have disappeared, and those are the clips that linked up. But we still have some that do have red outlines. Now we can go into our match criteria and change up some of the things in here to find some more matches. So let's go to source timecode, get a couple there, we'll link match sources, and now that this is highlighted, anytime we do that, the green checked clips will be hidden from us. If we turn it off, we can still see we have a ton of things linked. Let's turn off the file name and have source timecode or frame rate. Actually, file name and source timecode should give us a bunch. There we go. So we got a bunch of them, and let's see. I know a couple of these actually are probably not in that folder, and this is the great advantage of our Conform tool, is that you can go back, pick another folder, set that as a Conform location. Now to go through whatever criteria you have here, match it up, and we have almost everything matched here. We have two more clips. I think we've really illustrated the point enough. I can go find them. I do know they are on there, but let's just move on, and we can click preview and see that all of our clips are in here, or we can at this point really just go back to our timeline, bring up our big viewer, and move through. You can see a lot of the footage is all linked. Transitions, you can see some things have effects on them. This one has an axis and has been scaled up 150%. That came over from the XML. So it's work that you don't have to redo. So it's carrying over a lot of your hard work, a lot of the decisions you made early in the process. Another point also just to show is that it is a somewhat flexible environment. So if you had a really multi-layer timeline going on, you can pull this up and shrink that down, as well as vice versa. Get a nice big image so you can take a look at your footage in greater detail. So let's see, we've briefly touched on the Media Hub, touched on the Conform. We got a little bit of footage in here to work with. And let's look a little bit more at our timeline. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and actually let's make this a little bit bigger so I can see what we're scrubbing through. And I just want to pull a couple images out of here and kind of talk about maybe some editorial things. So I'm just going to match that out. Let's pull some of the live action shots out. Match that. Sure, we'll grab this. Anything that's live action rather than the inside of the plane necessarily. To get started, I think this is decent. So what kind of story do we want to tell here? Let's talk about editorial. So let's see. We start off at the beach. Go for a boat ride. We get to see some fish. You do some relaxing. Have a drink, which I honestly, depending on your story, those could be transposed. Actually, yeah, sure, let's transpose them. Lay that out this way. And in the end, you get a massage at the end of the day. So, just by using this open desktop format, you can kind of roughly storyboard things out. And, I'm going to actually copy this clip and open it as a sequence. And that's going to be the beginning of our edit. And now I'm just going to maybe slug some of this together. And as we can see, this clip is actually much, much longer than we originally had it. So let's look at this at a full view and see what frames of it that we want to keep. And we maybe we can use some more of this. So the original shot, I believe, that we were looking at is, and that's fine. So, boom, I'm just going to cut that. So let's take this. And again, let's go up to our open desktop. Let's look at this clip. I'll just actually scrub in that. I'm going to make a copy of that, put it in there. And you can see snap isn't on, but if you saw me drag it down in there, it then automatically comes on because I'm actually using a shift modifier key, a hotkey, to modify that to get what I need out there. And let's make this sequence a little bigger. So we can see what we're looking at. You can see each of these have like a little red arrow down here, and this is to indicate that they are a sequence clip or a record clip. Okay, we have our vacationer getting a drink. And as you can see, if you look over here, you'll see that light turn on and off as I apply the hotkey for snap to come on. Same thing with this. And this one is actually a different frame rate, so yes, we'll tell it to modify it so that it plays at the correct frame rate for us. And okay, and on this clip we'll just mark an in and an out to bring in the segment that we want. And that actually ends up being a lot shorter than I expected. And now we can kind of go down here and tweak our edit. Let's go into a bigger view to get an idea of what our pacing is. I'm actually going to turn ripple back on. And really kind of trim this down to a nice little short edit. Because some of these clips definitely seem to be a bit long. As enjoyable as they are, to imagine ourselves laying out there on the beach, especially now it's heading December. Okay, so let's just quickly kind of play this down. And already I can still feel it's, feeling slow. So let's work on editing. So this is really, what you do, what people do, what most people do day to day as far as really getting into the editing of things. You rough your clips in, you rough out the story that you want to tell, and then you finesse it. It's trim, cut, dissolve as you need. Some things in here I could definitely see. Maybe we'll add a time warp too. Could definitely help it. And we'll actually slip this down a little. It's not too boring. Just trim that down. Great. See, let's add some dissolves in here. And we are going to go up to cut. Do we not have the head frames on there? No, it helps to have some frames to actually dissolve with. So now we can go up to cut and drag that out a little bit. This one, let's add an effect and do some time warp on. And let's ramp the fish in. So for this, we're going to enter the editor. And actually, I'm going to go first frame, enter editor. I'm going to speed, set a key, last frame. Let's back up one, set a key. Great. Let's go to that first frame again and just really see if we can ramp in here. Select that curve instead of Bezier. Well, we'll set it to Hermite. I actually like dealing with that a little better. And as you can see in the time warp editor, we have two curves. One deals with your speed, the other deals with your timing. For the most part, I tend to concentrate on the speed because that's what I'm really trying to affect and manipulate. And select that, and I'm going to translate it across an X. And that comes down to 100. And let's just bend that up a little bit. There we go. So we'll exit out. Let's just process that quickly. And it shouldn't take very long at all. So that we can see what the feedback is. See how that fits in the context of the edit. And then from here we'll start touching on some of the the processes that you would use the most. We'll look at some of the color correcting as well as an effect that has kind of a hidden use, and that's the wipe effect. That we actually won't use as a wipe. It's a hidden gem within the timeline effects. Okay. As our time warp slowly comes to a point, and actually I think even if it's not fully rendered, it will play back. A time warp is something that isn't as computationally intensive. So we'll play this. As you can see, we didn't get any drop frames, so I probably didn't need to render all of that. I'm going to enter the editor and actually take that, and we're going to manipulate that in Y and take that value down to about 65. Let's just really make that a little bit more obvious. I think this maybe let's actually make some room here. I'm going to take this and slide all these guys down. Just put some space in there. I think that's too much. And since this is leisurely, I'm going to kind of overdo it, I guess, with the dissolves. And this one, do from cut, Drag that out a little bit more. Nice relaxing beach day. And into our massage, and we'll just fade that out on the back end. And off into Slumberland. Great. So, that's really a quick demonstration of, how I actually used to edit a lot of commercials, a lot of promos. I would go into here, storyboard out, lay things out in some kind of order, whether it's left to right, top to bottom. I found the freeform desktop to be a great advantage to that, and it's I don't think it's really touched on enough. We kind of skip through and talk about organization and how things are typically used in context of a lot of other applications, whereas this is a strength that I think that Smoke has always had, and that maybe not many people have tapped into or are as comfortable with. However, some people who have moved over to Smoke, once they get used to this format, it actually becomes very useful. Instead of having just a standard kind of source and sequence setup, you get into a position where you have multiple sources and your sequence. It gives you a quicker and broader overview of all the things that you have at your disposal. Okay. Now, typically, if you're doing edit, next thing you would do would be probably color correct. And this is a shot that I feel is just way too homogeneous. So I'm going to hit a color corrector on that, and we will step into that. When you step into the editor of the color corrector, it actually comes to a full scale interface, so that if you start modifying anything, for example, let's go into the contrast, all of the other values tools fade away and let you concentrate on your image, which is really kind of nice. And then when you let go, everything comes back up. So let's tweak this quickly. And shadow, I'm going to take that down, try and take some of the blue out of the shadow. Give this some nice overall contrast. Let's go in the highlights and actually maybe make that warmer, get some nice yellows in the fish. That's looking kind of interesting. Great, so exit out of here and we can kind of, let's go to fit. We can toggle this on and off really to see it before and after. So it went from something that was pretty homogeneous, it was pretty just a single tone, and brought some contrast and even some more color into it, which I think was really nice. And the other thing we want to look at is color matching. So let's do that quick. The first thing we'll do is we'll add the color corrector, and we'll step into that and actually move it right over to the color warper. Now to match it, I need to be able to see some of the other frames. So we need to go into that, and I'm going to go into the triptych player. And I actually got ahead of myself. We need to step out and set where we want our reference for our triptych player. So here you see 3 playheads down here corresponding to our 3 panels up here. So if I click over here on the right, this right one becomes yellow. And let's look at some nice blue water that we might want to match it to. For the center one, we're going to move that and select that. And I'm going to actually use this one and match from the right. So this is going to be our active viewport. These will be the 2 that we'll use as reference. And actually, to get a better view of the water that we're going after, let's zoom in a little bit. Great. And let's zoom into this. So we're going to go into this, go into the enter editor. And the first thing that we want to do is do a selective. So we'll go selective 1. This allows us to selectively color correct particular colors. And as you see, I scrub in here, there's a lot of things coming into color. And what that is showing us is the colors that we will be changing. And then we want to set our view to be the result. Match, we're going to select the color we want to match, and then we'll hit select again and the color we want it to match to. So we'll do that, and wow, it's just like that. So we can turn that off and back on, and then maybe even just a touch saturated for us, so we can dial that back just a little bit. And color matching can just really be that simple. We'll go back to just a player view, go through, and we can see maybe there's some green in there, in which case we can go in here into the editor, go back to our selective, tolerance, sample, and just add a little bit more to that. We've really picked up that when we didn't change the color of our trees, we've really gotten, we're able to just take that water and punch it up so that it fits more in with this water. Okay, so we kind of touched on, some of the basic things that you would end up doing for color correcting, except for maybe if you really wanted to build up a more complex color correct. And let's add another track or two here. Again, just simple right clicks that we can do that there. And for this time, I'm just going to make note that we have a second 20 dissolve, and I'm actually going to throw that away because I'm going to build up this particular shot and do a couple different color corrects. So on our base here, well, actually, let's build up the layers and then I'll color correct them individually. So do that, and let's do one more. There we go. So we have 3 layers. Let's build up from the bottom. Bottom one is going to be simple. Let's go color correct and take the saturation on that down to 10, next to nothing. Or actually here, I'm going to reset that. Let's enter the editor and just take out some particular colors. Green, cyan, black and white. Leave maybe some of these blues. The green. Sure, we'll go with that. Now here's where I'm going to start introducing the wipe effect, which we can actually use as an in-context mask. So we'll take that, enter editor, and if I zoom way out, you can see it's actually one big mask. And if you go down here, we actually have a schematic as if you're using garbage masks in the keyer or anything like that. So first thing I'm going to do is just throw that away. I'm going to look at our perspective and hit fit. And the first thing we want to do is we kind of, we want to vignette the whole thing. So I'm going to add geometry. I'm just going to draw a nice big soft circle in here. Let's pull that a little bit more over toward our talent. Exit, and we will add an additional color correct to that. So even from the top, I'm not even going to have to go down into this. I'm just going to desaturate that a little bit so we introduce a little bit of color. And again, I'm actually going to take the white from that, copy that to the top layer of that, so it's very similar. Enter the editor. I'm going to scale it down a bit more, modify the shape. Let's move that over. It's the danger of working in a really true 3D environment is that you many times do have a z-axis in there. So if you reach in there, it's easy to grab the z-axis. So we're going to exit out of that. Let's move up a layer. And that's almost exactly what I want. And that's a quick use of using the wipe as a garbage mask. So this will let you be able to work in selectives, work in layers, and do a selective kind of color correction that you may go beyond the color warper. Now the one thing we're going to have to deal with is that it's not moving, and that's easy enough. We can actually, once that comes back alive, we will go into the wipe, enter editor, go to the beginning of the clip, and Sure, let's move this over here and enter the stabilizer. And let's find something that'll track. A nice little dot there seems good. Tracker 2, we only need one tracker, and hit analyze. Now, in coming back, since we tracked a point that wasn't exactly where we had originally put the mask, we may have to make an adjustment, which is fine. So to do that, we can just go to schematic again. I'm going to add an axis here. Bring that in. Go to perspective, and just offset for what we need. Which is really, we wanted it up around, really centered on her, and now it should follow right along. So now we have a very kind of stylized, a bit more stylized look, and this, because we're starting to really build up layers, takes a little bit for it to process. Now I can take each one of these, and let's make note of this. Let's see, 15 frame. Dissolve. I'm going to take all three of these. Oops, I just want 2, 3 to the top. Select them, and then what we want to do is contain them. Contain selected. There we go. And what that allows us to do is, if we double click on that, you can see it's, I forget what it's called in some of the other applications. Nest. There it is. That's the word I was looking for, a nest. So now we can go back in and treat all those clips as a single entity. We can put our dissolve one there, and I believe we had it about 1.5 seconds, and at the end we had another dissolve that was from cut, and it was 15 frames. Great, so let's get this over here so we can kind of see our image. Select all of our effects that we've applied so far, and let's render them out and move on to the next bit. Okay, now that everything's rendered, we can go back to the beginning here and just play it down. Be great if we had audio to go along with this, but that'll wait for now. And actually, we'll touch on audio in just a little bit. So I saw one little odd thing in here, and I can bet I know what that is. So we double click on this. This should take us into the container. And what I think is happening, yep, we have a couple different layers in here, and maybe these just need to be extended out for the dissolve. So our bottom layer was good, but our other layers were just a little too short. And we'll just close that the nest or container view, and now that should, and I want to set this to, yep, preview effects, good. Just select that, render that dissolve, which really should take next to no time. Let's see if we can look at that. Yeah, just have a couple layers of compositing going on there. Great, so we've kind of fixed that. Now, before we leave, and actually I'm going to go up and use probably the same clip or one of these other clips. What clip do we want to use? Sure, we can use this clip as an example. Or actually, we'll just use a copy of it on the desktop. I'm going to open this as a sequence. One thing I want to touch on, and here we're going to dive into Connectfx. So I'll take the single clip, open it as a timeline, And the first thing we're going to do is create Connectfx. And now Connectfx, as we've talked about before, is our node-based compositing environment. Let's rephrase that. This is our node-based procedural creative environment because you can do all kind of creative endeavors in here. Some of it may require compositing, but really sometimes maybe it's just putting an effect on. And one thing you can do is actually create effects and save them off and even send them to other people. So I created about a dozen or so effects, and I'm going to load them now. So I'm going to go down to these bins. We have two different bins down here. One's user, one's project. Project will, as it says, follow the project around, and the user will follow just the user. So if it's under the user, you could log into multiple projects, and these effects will follow the user, whereas the effects that we load in under project will stick with just this project. And actually for this one here, I'll actually put it into the user bin. We're going to load user bin, and we need to, of course I have no bookmarks on here right now, and just need to find these. Unmanaged media. Looks Quinn preset pack. I'm going to load that, and now you can see we have about a dozen or so. Now if you want, you can actually find these on the area.autodesk.com. Sure, we'll go there. You want to go to downloads, downloads, fun extras. And the last time I saw them, here they are, right at the top. It has a set of icons here, a description on how to download them and how to insert them, and the download button. So once they're downloaded in here, you can actually just bring these up, and you'll see it doesn't look like some of our normal FX nodes, where it's just a single thing, single node with in and out. But it does have just where you can put the in and the out. And you can see this one has all kind of grain. See, I have a Film 70s mod. And if you really look at it, what it is, and we can ungroup that. This is actually a set of two nodes that I've already modified all the settings to, and produce a certain effect. So let's take these out, and we can throw another one in there. Actually, I'm not going to just drop it on. Sometimes it connects to internal nodes, so I like to do it explicitly. This one has a nice little halo thing going on with it. So here's our original plate, and here is the effect coming in. Nice little contrast, blowing out the whites a little, clean. And actually here, we'll just drag a couple of them in, and we can kind of compare them. So this, we're getting actually some kind of interesting blotting going on. I'm not sure what that's about. We can go in and actually ungroup it. In this case, this one's actually fairly extensive. Let's pull it out. I have a feeling it's probably got something to do with the glow and threshold. So let's take this. With height contrast. Sure. Let's take that down a little bit. Yeah, you can see as I dial down the glow a little bit. Maybe we need to make the transparency a little bit more, or dial down one of the levels. So this is something, as you can see, you can get in here and fiddle with it. Not all presets are going to work with every piece of footage, as some of the bits are different. What else do we have in here that might work well? I'm not sure. Really blown out glow. I'm sure it has its place. Blues and gold, that might be interesting. Very stylized, a little heavy on the gold for that one. Color sepia. That's an interesting touch. So as you can see, you can take a number of these, plug them in, and then really just kind of tap between them to see which one you like. And if you have one that brings you close, then you can step in and modify that. And actually making them is really fairly simple. Let's take some of these and toss them away. Really all that it is ungroup, you take a bunch of nodes, and let's zoom out a little bit. Here is our footage, here's our output. You take a number of these of your nodes that you set up where you have an effect that you like. It helps to have a single in and a single out. At least I find that certainly helps. And then you can right click on them and hit group, and it makes it into a big single interface. And then if you double click on that, you can go down here and turn which bits you want on and off and really customize the look of it. And that's really what I spent the time to do before. So let's undo that, because it looks like I grabbed my input and output same, and just connect those, select all those, and I don't want my input. There we go. Great, so that's a quick touch on just stepping into Connectfx, and one of the great things you can do about creating presets, almost creating your own plugins. So there are definitely some plugins out there that you could do the emulation for once, and then you'd have it for your own from there on out, as well as just exposing the bits that you need. Maybe you don't need the 20 or so parameters you tweak, maybe it's just one or two, a color or a bias or something like that. But saving off your nodes into a user or project bin is a great time saver, and it's also something that you can exchange between users. And actually I want to go back and touch on our little sequence we had put together before, our nice spa sequence here. Let's look at this. We have our color matched beginning. So this is our little teaser. And actually, see, I'm going to go to a collapse view. Look at that. Old habits there of swiping to the right, coming up. And what I actually want to do is I want to change the start time code of that, because let's talk about making different versions. So we want to change time code. I want it to be to 1 hour, and I want it to be the record time code. So I'm just going to select that. Now if we go to the timeline and look at that, I'm just going to go to my timeline, we can see it starts straight on 1 hour. Okay, so let's quickly make some kind of end page up for this bit. So I'm going to come here to the end. I'm going to mark an in on my timeline, and I'm going to go to, I think I added an extra 0 in there. That out so that our spot ends exactly at 30 seconds. I want to look at this desktop, our Conform desktop. We want to go to our thumbnail view. And there we go. And let's see if we can find some nice image out of this nice little string out. That looks nice. And here we can see this in our source and record view. Of course, we're in black over here. And I want it to, since I have an in and out marked here and an in and out marked here, it'll do a 4-point edit. It'll basically do a fit to fill and add a time warp. So it's down to 30%. And let's actually mix it a little bit more, because it's going to be stylized, and I think we can afford to do that. And in actuality, we can actually crank this up to be motion estimation. I'll actually leave it. Nope, I didn't want to go up in res. I want to go down in res. Now, when you do the motion estimation, is essentially an optical flow calculation, I believe. In which case, the resolution isn't the resolution of your final. That's the resolution it uses to calculate the motion vectors to do that time warp. So the lower the resolution, the less calculations it has to do to get the motion vectors. Obviously, at full resolution, it's going to be much finer, probably less chance of artifacting, but it's going to take much longer. Crank that down. This doesn't have a lot of motion in it. It's really just down in here that we have to be concerned about. And again, we should be able to see the result of that even without rendering the whole thing. Yeah, and that's a lot better. Great. Now that that is rendered, we can see that it plays back a lot smoother than just the blend. I'm going to right click and do a hard commit. Now what this does is this gets rid of any handles as well as commits the effect to it, thus making it a new piece of media. And because we're going to use this to create our end page that we're going to do some versions for, I don't want to have to re-render that time warp if by chance I do anything to it. So let's let's stylize this background a little bit. So I'm actually going to go into Connectfx to do that. And the first thing I'm going to do is just actually go to our stylize node, not to be too literal here. And I'm going to choose, I think maybe Oil Paint 4. That's not bad. And let's see, add another thing. Now here is a node we call Matchbox. Now what this is are a bunch of GLSL shaders written to affect the footage, and you see we have all kind of different things. So if you have somebody who's programmatically inclined and knows how to write GLSL code, you can really extend this as far as you want. I've actually heard that someone or somebody has started writing some of these to emulate some of the Instagram looks. So we're going to load that one, and that's just a vignette. Great. Double click, as with any node, you double click on it, and it'll give you the functions that relate to that. I want to dial this inner size down, bring it out so it's nice, soft to the edge. And I'm actually a big fan of Logic Ops. For any of you who have worked in Photoshop's blending modes, that's really what Logic Ops gives you the option of, and you can see pretty much all of them in there: hard light, soft light, overlay. Let's actually look at overlay or multiply. I think I like overlay a little bit better. Still gets a dark, a little bit of saturation. Actually doing that dials back the saturation a little bit, and I'm actually going to dial it back just a touch more. So we'll go into color correct, drop that into there, and we'll dial back the saturation just a little bit, and the overall gamma. So really tweak this so that we can lay some type here over at the end for multiple versions. So great, we have our nice stylized background. We exit out and look at the result. Kind of have that, and yeah, depending on what the show package might be, the green would work. So now we have this kind of broken up into a couple different layers. So our show is going to remain the same, but our date and time are going to be something that changes much more. So I can actually select the show and the background, and we will right click on that and contain those selected items. So we'll confirm that. It's just letting us know that we can't step into the container and then step into the Connectfx. That's kind of sending us down the road of inception of boxes within boxes. But that's fine, because if we need to, if we're really going to modify that, we could uncontain it. And then we have our text on the top to do versions. So I think there are a couple different ways to do versions, and just to keep ourselves clear of what we're doing, let's close up some of these other timelines, because it always helps to keep ourselves organized. We have our 30-second promo here for our spa getaways, and let's process that. Great, now that everything is rendered, we can start talking about versioning this. And there are two different ways that people version. One is making separate clip outputs, which we can go to the reels and say make a copy of that, move that down, step back into the timeline, and just change out our piece here on the end, in which case it's enter editor. Set this to no preview. We want to do a tonight. Make sure to adjust your kerning as you care. We'll go to our next layer and tweak that in. exit, and that one's ready to render, which definitely is a valid way to work. Again, so as tomorrow, tonight, we'd have another version, make a copy, step into that, enter the editor. That one would be a next version. Tag over to that, tighten it up. I think here my kind of cable promo roots are really kind of coming out. So then when you're done, you end up having, a bunch of recorded clips, each one which you can put into a folder. Let's just organize ourselves here. Say new folder, output, and see, let's select this, and this. Oops, it's not going to let me select them all. So we can see up here the ones in red, 2 and 3, and we're going to stick those into output. Now we can select all of them, select bottom to top, right click, and if we needed to, I believe we could render them off just for the end page bits. So you could gang them up, do multiples that way. Now the other way a lot of people do things, do their versions, is doing them all in one timeline, and we can do that as well. So again, we'll start with our tomorrow clip. Double click on that to open up in the timeline, and we would want all of them to start on the minute. So we're going to go to move that down, select everybody. And at this point, when I would do something like that, I would end up probably taking this whole background, going under this. So I would do a merge tracks, and what that does is it takes everything in your timeline and merges it into a single committed piece of media. And actually that took a layer that I didn't want. I just want to merge what's below here. Let's see if I can get it to do that. Let's do a merge. There we go. So that way we do have our spa getaways, but we have our text on the top, our version that we're not going to have to render. Again, so let's move this down to 101. And that way now I just need to take our top level, copy that down, and just for consistency I'll keep it all. But I want to keep this just in case there are some changes, because clients have been known to make changes on occasion. And again, our version process for this is relatively similar. So we'll do a tonight. Helps if you spell it correctly. You will get called on that. Our next layer, let's trim that back. And I'm sure there's something I could do to tighten that up again. Let's see. I didn't spend all of our time today really overly working the design of this end page, but that's fine. I think it's really serving our purpose. And if you set up your workflow well enough, you should be able to cut through this fairly quickly. Exit. So again, we have our 3 versions. The only thing that really needs to be rendered on these back 2 pieces are just the little text bits there. And the last thing that would be done is to slate it. So you could do it as individual clips, which if you have different deliverables for each, may be a way to go. Or if you are sending them all out as a single batch and timeline, that you could lay them all out as a string within one timeline and lay them out that way. Your final deliverable file will be more huge. And actually, from everything that I've done of recent, I've started making individual clips because things are going digital delivery. If you're going to tape, laying them out in a single timeline is helpful. Whereas if you're doing a digital delivery, say that 3 times fast, individual files I think are going to be the way you want to go. Okay, our clip should be just about done rendering. I'm going to hit that. This one is done, and let's look at a full view. Great, and now, these could be animated. This could be doing a small, nice, slow animation as well. Let's see how this looks in the back end. Not bad. Could probably have customized a little more with a little fade into the back end. And actually, that should have a fade into. Oh, it fades down. Spa getaways, yeah. Well, there you go. So we have a string of promos here. We have various different outputs. Which leads us for the last thing. We need to talk about outputs. So for that, for our Media Hub, let's see, I'm just going to output this to one of my drives. So I'll go to Home Drive and to the G-RAID and find a folder to put it into. We'll go into my unmanaged media, which is a folder I keep on here that's located on the RAID, but is not managed media in the sense that Smoke can manage your media. And next thing we want to do is export this. So we can just right click and export, or actually, if we really want, let's take all four of these, our tomorrow, tonight, next, and our string. Actually would have been good had I named all of them. Let's just take say 3 of them rather than 4. We'll drag these over here, and this will bring up our media export. And you'll see it says 3 clips selected. And this, again, helps to be organized. By default, it goes to file sequence. However, we can go to movie. And then we already have some presets here. So if you're going, who knows, dealing with some kind of Avid output, back to ProRes, MXF, or QuickTime, we can use all those. If you're doing it for maybe some kind of digital delivery for approval, you can send it to, we have preset formats for Apple TV and iPad and iPhone for your clients who want to check their final product on their iPhone, and as well as a BlackBerry Playbook. Tons of presets. Now if you want, you can go into the advanced options, in which case here you can set all the different things that you would find in the preset. So let's choose 422HQ. Maybe this is going to be a final digital delivery of some sort. We will include audio. If you have a particular LUT you're using, maybe it's to clamp colors, maybe it is for a particular delivery spec like a DCP or something like that. You can do that. And down here for our files, we actually have a token naming system that you can set up so that if you have version things, workstation, you can tag each output with various tokens that we have set here. So maybe it's time, and here you can see it's actually we'll do a name. Let's see, and we can customize that underscore time. Let's take the time off there and re-add it with that underscore in there. And yeah, so 11 hours, 52 minutes. That is just the time at this point in time. And you can keep adding those on with whatever you want in between. Maybe you want periods, underscores, just dashes. And, if you have versions, let's put another underscore and see if it recognizes, see how it does the versioning. So in that case, we don't have versions attached to it, but we could do that. For your final output, you can also take it same as clip, or you can scale it on its output. Again, if you just go, this is just movie, video options, has a lot of the same thing. Audio, you can change your compressions. And final clip options. And what this can do, that's more for your publish. So if we went under here to sequence publish, and clip options should be in there. One thing we didn't touch on is under sequence publish. So we have some things if you are going to Pro Tools. So you can go to AAF for Pro Tools, audio only, so that'll do that. Or you can do with a DNX HD video reference. And that will give them a video reference as long. So that'll be a bit larger of a file. We also have our simple publish and source media publish. And publishing we actually will talk about later, but also it has our token naming system, which comes in handy. And when you're all done, you just hit export and it will do all 3 clips for whatever settings you have. And once you deliver your files, that's it. We can all wrap up, go home, and spend more time with our family because we're able to get our work done a little bit faster here in Smoke. Thank you for coming by and spending time with us today and watching this Smoke webinar. Hopefully we've shed a little light on some of the corners that hadn't been explored as much before. We'd love to hear what you think and hear how you're using Smoke, so check us out on the area. And you can also see some of our further training options on the Smoke Learning channel on YouTube, as well as many other resources that are out there that you can find, I think, linked from the area. Thanks a lot, and take care.